Now these are the 5 functional classes of our antigens or our immunoglobulins. We have IgG, which is a monomer. Um, you can see it here on the left. It's produced by the plasma cells when you have the primary response to this antigen. And then the memory cells, that's at every secondary exposure. And this is the most prevalent immunoglobulin or antigen. IgA is the next one, and there are 2 forms. There's the form at the bottom that has the 2 binding sites, and then there's this one at the top that's called a dimer, and it has 4 binding sites. And you find the one at the bottom in your blood, and the one at the top with the 4 binding site, that's in your mucus and serous secretions. The one right in the middle that has, it's huge. It's got 10 binding sites on it, and it's got 5 monomers that you see. And this is the first one that is synthesized when you first encounter this antigen. This one, IgD, is just a receptor for the antigen that's on B cells. And it's got the 2 binding site. And the last one, IgE, also has 2 binding sites. It's the least common, and it's involved in your allergic reactions and your parasitic worm infections. So here we're going to look at levels of antibodies. The primary response, what happens here is a latent period. There's no real antibody activity going on. The first antibody to appear is going to be IgM and then IgG. That appears when the first memory cells are activated. And then a few weeks later, the titer tapers back to low levels, or the concentration of the antibody in the blood tapers back to low levels. The secondary response is anamnestic, and this is a latent period because other memory lymphocytes from earlier response are going to immediately react. And so you're going to have a rapid rise in the antibody titer, mainly of IgG, for several weeks. And then a little bit of IgM is going to be produced by your naive B cells. Boosters are just it's a quick, potent strike against subsequent exposures to different infectious agents. You know, you have to get tetanus boosters every 10 years. Now these are categories of immunity. Active immunity. You receive an immune stimulus, which is the microbe, and that activates specific lymphocytes. So when you have this microbe, it's going to cause the production of antibodies and create memory. It does take time, but it lasts a long time. Passive immunity, these preformed antibodies are donated to the individual from another source, another human or from an animal or another source. It doesn't create memory. It acts immediately. It's very short term. Natural immunity is just acquired by your normal life experiences, but not through medical intervention. And artificial immunity is when you have a vaccine that provides you with immunity. Natural active immunity, you get this infectious disease, and after that you're resistant to reinfections. Natural passive immunity is passed from mother to child, across the placenta to the fetus, and then through the mother's milk also. Artificial active immunization is a vaccination, and it triggers an immune response to antibodies and memory cells. And artificial passive immunity, this is immunotherapy where you've got a patient that's at risk for getting a particular infection, so they're given this preparation that has some antibodies in it that work against that infectious agent. So immunotherapy is a passive immunization in which you give the person the antibodies.